We stayed in Ubud, Bali, which is known for preserving their roots. It's a center for traditional crafts and dance. Probably the most impactful experience is being genuinely involved with the culture and the people of Bali. Green Line was able to introduce us to many customs, such as the flower offering.
The main thing I learned about Bali was about the religion. 85% of the population is Hindu, so the majority of the country practices the same religion. They have certain things they have to do, like creating flower offerings for the gods.
They make flower offerings called kanang sari every day to give prayers and praise to Sanghyang Widiwasa, which is part of Hinduism.
I thought it was pretty beneficial that we learned the language on like day 2. I think that kind of helped us really get closer to the locals.
They also practice many different ceremonies, like the Day of Reflection, where everyone in the country stays home to reflect on what they learned during the year and what they can accomplish in the next year. It is also a time for them to talk to their families, since most of them work long hours of the day. Along with the ceremonies, they have a traditional Balinese dance called the Keka dance that tells the story of a monkey and a princess.
A global perspective is important when going abroad or working with people of different cultures, because some countries are underdeveloped or developing and do not have the same access to resources as developed countries do. For an example, in Bali, they don't usually wear deodorant because this is a luxury item, so sometimes you would just smell body odor when you're working with the kids in the classroom or just on the street. Also, around the kitchen and food, there was a lot of stray dogs and cats and chickens that would just be walking around. And one time we saw a cat that was just sleeping inside the clean dish rack.
In the future, if we become health professionals, we'll be working with people of different backgrounds and cultures, so it's important for us to not judge them, call them disgusting, or make faces just because their standards of health are different than ours.
One of the most memorable experiences that I had while in Bali was when we went to the villages where the native people lived to do batik painting, which is one of the types of painting that the Balinese people do. And so the houses that they lived in were covered but not fully enclosed, and they had dirt floors, and then the kitchen and bathroom was like super primitive, and there were chickens and lizards and rats running around. And seeing that the way that they lived was a really humbling experience, and it made me feel grateful and like I never have anything to complain about. And then on top of that, even though that they don't have very much there, they're still like the kindest and most gracious people, and they seem to be overall more stress-free than we are. So I think that this is something that we can learn from, and it's something that really stuck with me.
My group focused on teaching sexual health education to high school students, and it was a bit of a culture shock when we realized how little the students actually knew about that. There's a lack of access to educational materials, which translated to clear inequities in health, and gender-based inequities were particularly evident based on some of the questions.
Bali, Indonesia is a very spiritual country, and because of this, it's very taboo to talk about anything sexually related. Because of this, most of the children at the schools we taught at had very little knowledge of their own bodies, their own reproductive health, and why they even have menstrual cycles. We were able to talk to them and teach them all about this, but most of the questions came and stemmed from, why is this happening? Why is my period this color? It's a huge lack of knowledge gap. Even though they are getting educated in school, they're not really getting educated about their own bodies.
The girls asked questions for which we know the answers to and take that for granted. In the U.S., we start teaching reproductive health in grade school, public education. We can talk to our family about it. We can even talk to our healthcare providers about it. And these options are non-existent to quite a few of these students. So it was clear that our lessons were actually needed, and it felt good to know that our volunteering actually had a positive impact.
Boys start smoking and drinking at a very young age due to the pressures of society. Those who denied smoke or drink were bullied and isolated, so it leaves them with no choice but to start the habit.
So the girls, however, have a different role. They are taught to take care of men who were under the influence of alcohol and drugs, and actually to not take part in the act. So we can see that their culture is more on the patriarchal side. Women are caregivers and men are workers. We also learned that the students would mix their liquor with harsh, inedible liquids to intensify the effects of alcohol. They'll mix like a popular liquor called Arak with shampoo. So they saw on the label of the shampoo that it contains cetyl alcohol, and they assume it's the same alcohol found in Iraq but cheaper. Their knowledge on the effects of alcohol and tobacco on the body was very shocking. We taught seniors, and they didn't even know what they were consuming. So this is just due to the education system in the U.S. Topics like drugs and alcohol were taught to us at a very young age, and it was reiterated throughout our adolescent years. In Ubud, the topic of drugs and alcohol is considered taboo. It was unfortunate to see that education did not have universal standards. Bali as a whole had a very weak form of health communication. The efforts of health communication are not effective just because it wasn't heavily enforced in learning environments. Cigarettes there, they had very dark, gruesome photos like black lungs, skulls, mouth ulcers. You had to take into perspective on how these students get their hands on alcohol and drugs. Their age restriction laws on the purchase of alcohol and tobacco aren't strict. It's all about money for them, unfortunately. This also shows that health policy isn't universal, and in Bali it isn't a priority.
I just really liked being around all of the kids because they were all so polite. They all listened to us. They just thought of us as their elders. They were so respectful.
I'm so excited to go see them after class is done.
Throughout our trip, we noticed that the Balinese people valued time, success, and stress differently than we do here in America.
Balinese people seemed more relaxed about completing their daily tasks, and everything was much slower paced. For example, whenever we'd be out eating at a restaurant, here in America we would expect them to bring us a check right away, but there they didn't really have the concept of being rushed on time, so they would just wait for us to ask for the check and then they would bring it to us eventually.
On one of the last days in Bali, we happened to witness a couple elementary school girls walking home together, and despite being stuck in the rain, barefoot, and with limited protection, they still were laughing and in good spirits. That showed us how little they stress about situations out of their control.
In Bali, we noticed how happiness outweighs the monetary value, and they try to strive to be truly happy rather than making lots of money, as in comparison to the United States, we strive for money as success.
Bring as much medication as you can because travel sickness is a real thing. I've been sick since day one going to Bali, and I'm actually still experiencing symptoms. I just started my second antibiotic, so come prepared.